Hello everyone, welcome to the next session on our admin series, record level security. So we have already, spoke about the org-wide security, right? The organization level security, and then we have also spoken about object and field level securities. Now we are talking about the record level security. So the agenda for this session is basically we'll be talking about what is record level security, right? And key factors that decide the record level access types, and then ways to control record level security. Or then we'll discuss multiple types of record level security, starting with the organization-wide default as part of part one. Then also we'll be discussing about some important points here. So starting with, firstly, the question is, what is record level security? So record level access basically it determines the access the individual user will have basis the object level access he has on profile. So for example, let's say there's a custom object called student, and one of the profiles has the access to it, and there are like 10 users assigned to that particular profile, right? And they have like read, view, and edit access, right? And that is the object level access. So consider it as a spreadsheet. You have the access to the spreadsheet, but now we want to control which row you can, which row you cannot, right? So from that aspect, record level security comes into play, wherein you decide, okay, this particular spreadsheet is accessed by these folks, right? But who needs to view which particular row, right? Or which particular record in talking, like talking in Salesforce terms here. So that is how that is why that is what is probably record level security. And now we'll be talking about the key factors deciding record level access. So you should ask yourself a couple of questions. First is, should your users have open access to every record, or they should just see a subset? So breaking this down, you need to understand, okay, there are like 10,000 records in my system. Can everybody see everything in the system? First, if yes, no need for record level security, right? You can control it through OWD, which we'll be talking about in the next session, right? If some of the users needs to see the entire data and some needs to see a subset of data. Now I'll explain this with an example here. So for example, there's a manager, right? There's a sales manager, there's a director, and then there's a sales representative. Say Jack is the manager and John is the representative. Now John wants to see only those leads which belong to him, right? And he should not see any lead belonging to, say, Sam, right? Who is another sales representative, because there certain times there can be a competition, right? That okay, he has closed these many deals and I am closing only these many deals and something like that. So probably going to hide different data sets from different users. In that case, definitely recordable security comes into play. Both have access to the lead object on the profile or permission sets, but they should not see each other's data. That is where the record level security comes into play. And also the manager should see the data for both, right? Since both are reporting to him. So this is how, the more complex it gets, the more methodologies we have to implement the record level security. So basically these are the scenarios which come into play when we talk about record level security. This is one of the very basic examples, but there are lots and lots of complex scenarios when it comes to, specifically record level accesses with enterprise level organizations here. Now talking about ways to control record level security. So as you can see this diagram, right, probably a funnel diagram. So the first level of access is organization-wide defaults. So this basically controls the entire organization structure. So for example, this is more of a default value you assign to a particular object in terms of record level access. So for example, on a lead object, you assign the default value as public read write, right? Say public read write. In that case, everybody and anybody can edit all the records in the system, right? So this probably determines, okay, what is the level of access you want to give to the entire organization, and you cannot reduce the access. So for example, you set the OWD to public, right? You cannot reduce that access. You can only increase the access levels. Like if you see this funnel diagram, right? It says visibility opens up. So organization by default should be the most restrictive access, and then role hierarchy can give slight access to certain folks, and then sharing rules can broaden it up, and then we have manual sharing. We also have apex sharing that will be covered more in the development side of things, not now, but yeah, we do have those as well. Now talking about role hierarchy. So role hierarchy ensures that managers have access to the same records as their subordinates. Like I mentioned, right? Jack is probably, or Jo- I confuse the name, right? So Jack is say the manager, and there's John and Sam. They report to Jack. Jack wants to see all the data for these folks who are reporting to him. So the role hierarchy comes into play, and that can be utilized to level up access and see what your subordinates are working on. Then the third level of access is sharing rules. So sharing rules are automatic exceptions to archive defaults for particular group of users, right? So basically, suppose you say there is a lead, right? And if region of the lead there's a region field on the lead, and if you say, okay, if region is say North America, right? If the region is North America, give access to this particular group of people or this particular user. So this is how you can control the accesses. And so in this case, you'll have to have the org wide defaults as private, right? And then you can use the sharing rules to wider access for say North America and South America. You can have access to different folks. That is how you can control the access there. Then manual sharing. So manual sharing is about manually sharing the records. So you have a share button on the top right. Click on that. You can choose the user you want to share it with, and it gets shared. Manual sharing is also revoked once you change the owner of the record. But anyways, we'll cover that in the next sessions to come here. But this is how we control the record level security, and this is one of the very critical topics in terms of data security in Salesforce. So please practice this a lot and have multiple scenarios here. Now we'll be starting with the first, way of controlling the record level security, that is organization by defaults. So, org-wide sharing. Org-wide sharing default specifies the baseline level of access, like I mentioned. So that is the most restrictive access you should have. So, for example, you check, okay, you have like 100 users in the system. You say, okay, what is the most restrictive access I want to give to any one of the users? You identify that, then object permission determine the base level of access for all the records in an object, right? But org by level default modify those permissions for the record and user doesn't own, right? So for example, you say, okay, Sanjeet is owner of one of the records and John is owner of another record. They will definitely have access to their own records. But if you want to show certain set of records to Sanjeet, which belong to some other person, say Sam, right? So therein you need to have the record level access in place. If the org by default is set to public, in that case you cannot reduce the accesses. So just keep that in mind, and then only configure the org wide sharing or org wide defaults. Primary thing to consider is what is the minimum level of access you want to give to anybody in your organization. Now, how to determine right OWD? So again, who is the most restrictive user in this object? So for example, lead. If there is a representative that is like the most restrictive user, you don't want him to see any and everything in the system. The answer is private, right? Is there ever going to be an instance of this object that this user shouldn't be allowed to see? Yes. If yes, then it is OWDs. It should be private, right? Is there ever going to be an instance of this object that this user should not be allowed to edit? If he should not be allowed to edit, but he can see everything, that will be public read only. So this is how we categorize, right, what should be used where.
So talking about access levels in OWD, firstly we have public read write. So basically, whenever we want all the users to probably edit and read any record, in that case we give the OWD as public read write. The second option comes is public read only. So whenever we want that everybody in the organization can view all the records of the system but cannot edit all, so in that case we go with a public read only. You need to make sure that this is the most restrictive access, that once you give say read only OWD, then any and everybody in your org with access on that object on a profile and permission set or permission set can view anything in the system related to that particular object. So please keep that in mind. Most restrictive access should be given on OWD. The last one is a private, right? Sorry, the second last is a private. So in private, only the record owner can edit or view the record, and then we can use other methodologies like what do you call it, role hierarchy and sharing rules and manual sharing, apex sharing, for to increase the visibility, like we discussed in our previous decks here. So the last option is controlled by parent. Controlled by parent is basically utilized for master tail relationships, wherein if you have the access to the parent record, you definitely have the access to the child record. For example, let's say account is the parent record and we have a custom object called student, for example, right? And student is like a detail and account is the master. If you have access to the account record, you definitely will have access to the child record. That is how the control by parent works, and it is really amazing. At times you can control a lot of visibilities using control by parent, so use this wisely. Now I'll move to certain important parts, and then we'll move to the demo here. I'll share my dev org and we can go through and see how we can configure all these. So basically, the permissions on record are always evaluated according to the combination. It is not just record level security. It is a combination of object level, field level, and record level security. So for example, if you don't have access to a particular object on a profile or permission set, even if you have the public read write record level access, like it won't matter because you won't be able to edit anything since you are not able to see the object. Consider it as a spreadsheet. So spreadsheet is an object, and then columns are fields in a spreadsheet, and then you have rows which are records. If you don't have access to the spreadsheet, how can you view the rows, right? So consider it some similar in a similar term here. Then whenever the object level permissions conflict with record level permissions, the most restrictive setting wins. So that means that suppose on object level you have only read access, right? But on a record level like OWD you have a public read write. In that case, you will only be able to see the record because the most restrictive access will override the preliminary access. So just few points to consider here. These are very important when we architect and solution a system, because record access visibility are a critical data integrity and data security side of things, so that should be kept in mind here. I'll just start I'll share my screen and I'll log into my devog, and then we can do a quick demo here. Hello everyone. So I logged into my devog here to understand and see how we can control the OWD. We need to go to the setup from here, right? I'm already on the setup screen. Go to the quick find box, search for sharing settings, right? Once you are here, you can see that there are two types of settings here. One is the default internal user. So default internal user is basically for the internal licenses, and external is for the community licenses, right? So just keep that in mind. Now we have lead as private, right? Account and contact also as private. You can also make it read only, read write, or read write and transfer. So basically for lead, we have a transfer this access as well, wherein you can auto reassign to different users. You can transfer the leads, so that also is allowed here. So let's try with a private, right? So the contact is private here. You can see it is private. I have created two different users, right, which are not having view all access on their profile. So since this user is an admin user, I'll be having view all and edit modify all access on all the objects in the system. So I'm not using my account to test, but I've created two different users with the Salesforce platform user licenses, and we'll test it out, right? So since the contact is private, right, that means that only the owner of that record should see the record. So the owner of the record should see that particular record and not the other records in the system. So let's save it out. I'll go back to the users. Let me clone this screen for a bit. I'll go to the users. Right. So here I have these two users, Allison and Noah. Right, I'll log in through Allison and let's see what Allison sees. And also, these are all standard platform users. So I go here, I search for all contacts. It only sees Sam Avanti, right? And let's see who's the owner. Allison is the owner, right? So if Allison is the owner, then he can see only his own contacts and he won't be able to see any other contacts in the system. Like you can see here, right? Now let me log out from Allison and let me log in from Noah. Right. So Noah can see John's key, right? And John's key's owner is Noah. That is why, this particular user can see the record. Now let's do one thing. Let's try and make it public read only, right? And see what happens, right? Let me log out from Noah, back to the admin account, go to the settings. Let me edit it out and have contacts as public read only. I'll have to make this also public read only. I think there are a lot of processes. This is my test also. I do a lot of processing in the backend at times. Yep. So contact is now public read only. Now let me go back and log in from Allison and let's see what happens. So now what should happen is that Allison should be able to edit his record, but all other records should be visible to him, right? So let's click on all records. Let's this is Sam Avanti, and you can see, right, he's able to edit it, right? Let's search for Jack. Let's go to our contact, search for Jack. So it was John, I guess. No, no, no. Let's try this out. You say, right? I try to edit a record. It says you don't have necessary privileges to edit this record. See your admin, seek your administrator's help, right? So he won't be able to edit it. But if I go and check Sam Avanti, where he's the owner, he'll be able to edit it out since he's the owner, right? So this is how the org-wide sharing works, and this is one of the key and critical features here. So just keep in mind while implementing, and we'll be talking about other ways to implement record level security in our next sessions to come. Thanks everyone.